18 years ago, Clara, Marin's world was ripped apart when her toddler vanished from daycare, taking with her the single most precious piece of Clara's life. For nearly 2 decades, the trail had grown cold. Then one ordinary day, a glossy magazine cover would shatter everything she thought she knew. Clara stood between the towering shelves of the Asheville Public Library, the faint scent of old paper and glue lingering in the air. At 45, threads of silver wove through her light brown hair, but her hands still moved with the same measured precision they had for 20 years. The library was more than her job, it was the place that had carried her through the darkest chapter of her life. She slid a battered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird back into place when movement at the entrance caught her eye. A young woman, maybe in her late 20s, wrestled the door open, juggling a shopping bag in the tiny hand of a blonde toddler. The little girl, no more than 2, bounced with each step, pigtails swinging like clock pendulums. "Excuse me," the mother called, approaching Clara's desk. "Could you point me to the children's section?" "Of course," Clara said warmly. "Through that archway to the left. We just got some new picture books yesterday." "Thank you." But the toddler had already wriggled free, grabbing at a rack of colorful bookmarks and sending them fluttering to the floor. "Sophie, no touching." Her mother chided gently. "It's fine." Clara chuckled, waving off the apology. "That's what they're for, to be noticed." The little girl looked up and grinned. Something about that toothy, unguarded smile gripped Clara's heart like a vice. It was Ellis's smile. For one piercing moment, 18 years dissolved, and Clara was back in the nightmare she could never escape. She remembered the day in vivid fragments, the missed call while she was shelving, books in the basement, the 3 voicemails from Little Acorn's daycare that went unheard in her purse, the police cruisers lined up outside when she arrived for pickup lights, throwing red and blue shadows across the playground. "There must be some mistake," she told the officer. "I'm just here to pick up my daughter, Rella Maruin." Officer's hand had been heavy on her shoulder, his voice unbearably gentle as he asked her to come inside. Days later, she'd seen the grainy footage, a trusted staff member, Maurice Pledger, leading Yella to the gate, glancing around before bundling her into a waiting car. For months, the search devoured her life. Courage to David crumbled. Before the year was out, he couldn't bear to live in a house haunted by absence. Clara stayed in Asheville, refusing to move. What if Ella came back? What if someone found her? 2 weeks after the abduction, Maurice was found hanging from a tree in Pisgah National Forest. Suicide, they called it. Guilt, they guessed. But Ella was gone without a trace. Her birthmark, a violet lotus blossom around her left eye, was the detail. Clara repeated in every interview, on every flyer. She stapled 2 telephone poles until the weather tore them apart. "Clara?" She blinked. Sarah, her coworker, was watching her with concern. "You've been staring at that shelf for 5 minutes." "I'm fine, just remembering." Sarah's voice softened. "Why don't you take the new deliveries?"
"Oh."
Up here, grateful Clara retreated to the back room where cardboard boxes were stacked neatly. She took out her box cutter and began slicing them open, losing herself in the comfort of routine. Magazines slid out in glossy stacks, the Atlantic, National Geographic, fashion titles their patrons loved. She reached for the next. Stack hand froze. Vogue dot on its cover, a young woman stared out from a sunlit farm, dressed in an off-the-shoulder red blouse, a patterned scarf knotted over her hair, denim at her hips. She wasn't a typical model, but that didn't matter. Clara's gaze had already locked on the detail that stole the air from her lungs. The birthmark. A perfect violet lotus blooming around her left eye. Her knees buckled, hand gripping the desk for balance, the other clamped over her mouth as a strangled sound escaped her. The face was older, now exposed, sharp jaw, strong, but the eyes, and that mark. She had traced it with her fingertip countless nights while rocking her baby to sleep. For 18 years, Clara had stared into the empty spaces of her life, clinging to fading hope. Now staring back at her from a fashion magazine was Ella. With shaking hands, Clara opened the page's heart. Pounding loud enough to drown out the quiet library air, the cover image had hooked her, but it was the editorial spread inside that made her pulse slam against her ribs like a trapped bird. She found the feature on page 32, a visual ode to the hands and hearts that keep America growing. The photographs were arresting, unguarded glimpses of rural life, each frame humming with a truth high fashion rarely dares to touch. And there she was again. The young woman Clara believed was. Ella stared back from a full-page shot, glancing over her shoulder, mid-task. Unlike the carefully styled poses around her, this one felt stolen from real time, the girl genuinely working caught in a pause between motions. Sunlight threaded through her light brown hair, striking filaments of honey gold Clara recognized from her own mirror. And there, even in profile, inescapable, the birthmark. Clara's gaze dropped to the caption, Emmy Wells 20 at Kessler Farm in rural Appalachia. Emmy Wells, not Ella Marin, but the age aligned. Ella would be 20 now, taken just shy of 2. Drawing a deep breath to steady the quake inside her, Clara began the interview snippet printed beside the photographs. What's your name? Emmy Wells. That's a lovely name. Thanks. My mama says I was born with dirt in my veins. Why no makeup like your friends? Didn't have time. Was hauling hay before you pulled up. Your eyes, there's something rare about them. The story then. Wide into the bigger picture, economic pressures on local farms undercut by imports, the environmental calculus of sustainable methods. The revival of traditional practices among younger growers, but the words slid past Clara like rain on glass. She could only see the young woman with her daughter's mark, her daughter's age, and a quiet, unmistakable resolve in her face that belonged to David. That calm iron, that graceful steadiness. At the end of the spread, Clara found what she needed. Photography by Leah Dalton. She checked the wall clock to 15 p.m. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to Detective Gary Holden. He'd led Ella's case at the start, one of his first major investigations. They hadn't spoken in years, but his number was still there. The call went straight to voicemail. Gary's recorded baritone asked her to leave a message. She hung up. This was not news to compress into a minute of audio. The magazine in her hands felt too urgent, too volatile. Decision made. Clara grabbed her purse and the magazine and hurried to the front desk. Sarah was helping an elderly patron. I need to go now, Clara said, voice taut, eyes bright with contained shock. What happened? Sarah asked, gaze flicking to Clara's white-knuckled grip. Clara turned the magazine to the cover. I think I found her, Sarah. I think I found Ella. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth as she registered the birthmark. Everyone at the library knew. Many had stapled flyers beside Clara in those first frantic months. Go, Sarah said instantly. We'll cover your shift. Do you want someone with you? No. I have to get to the police. Show them this. Clara was already backing toward the door as if the image might evaporate if she hesitated. Tell us what happens, Sarah called after her then. Soft or good luck. Heads lifted across the room, Marty, from reference Diane from circulation. When they saw the magazine, a small wave of encouragement followed Clara to the exit. In the parking lot, she slid into her aging Civic, laying the magazine carefully on the passenger seat. For a beat, she just gripped the wheel and forced her lungs to cooperate. 18 years of false dawns had taught her to ration hope. But this mark, this singular lotus, wasn't chance. It was too specific to exact. Clara reached the station and stepped inside. The front desk, she presented the magazine and asked for Detective Holden. Yes, he was in. Please wait. A few minutes later, they led her back. Gary Holden had weathered since she'd last seen him, hair gone fully gray, the lines deeper, but his eyes held the same blend of kindness and resolve. He'd been young when Ella vanished. One of his first big cases. Clara knew it had never fully released its grip. Clara, he said, standing. It's been a while. I found something, she said, setting the magazine on his desk. I think I found Ella. Side by side, they compared the photo with Ella's childhood images. The lotus birthmark aligned perfectly. Gary dialed the magazine's editorial. Office put the call on speaker. He asked about the issue, and the photographer, Leah Dalton. The representative's voice brightened. They'd traveled to remote farms across Appalachia and other old American pockets for this month's theme. Dalton shot families spontaneously in everyday clothes. No staging. That rawness was why the spread was resonating. Has a real eye for genuine moments, the woman said. The feedback's been wonderful. I'm calling about one photograph, Gary said. The young woman on the cover of Me Wells? Asterisk. Oh yes, the rep said. A remarkable find. Not a professional at all. Just a farm girl with the most fascinating birthmark. Gives her a mysterious quality, don't you think? Clara pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, fighting the shock of hearing her daughter's defining mark reduced to a novelty. Gary requested the exact location. The rep named the Kessler farm owners John and Miriam Kessler. No precise pin, she apologized, but offered another farm's address and said. Kessler's place sat roughly 10 miles north of it. When the call ended, Gary exhaled, measured, and firm. It's enough to reopen, he said. I'm assembling a team now. We go to Kessler Farm immediately. Clara rose, resolve hardening her features. I'm going with them. Gary hesitated. Clara, in cases like this, I'm going, Gary, she cut in her voice, leaving no room for argument. I've waited 18 years. I'm not waiting another day. This is the closest we've ever come. After a beat, he nodded. I understand. But I have to make arrangements first. I've got a court appearance this afternoon I can't miss. Her face fell. You're not coming? Can't, he said, regret threaded through his tone. I'll send my best officers and join you tomorrow. Right now, the priority is to learn whether this Emmy Wells is your Ellie and, if so, how she ended up at the Kessler farm. She swallowed, then nodded. When can we leave? 30 minutes, he said. 2 officers will accompany you. He set a steadying hand on her shoulder. Clara, prepare yourself. Even if she is Ella, she's lived another life for 18 years. She may not remember you. I know, she whispered, voice taut with emotion, but she's my daughter. That's all that matters right now. True to his word, half an hour later, Clara met Officers Bennett and Martinez, their expressions brisk, their movements precise. I'd like to follow in my own car, she told them. I've kept some of Ella's things in the trunk, just in case. Quick exchange of glances, then a nod. It's fine, Bennett said. Her pulse was a metronome of hope and dread as she crossed the lot. After nearly 2 empty decades, she was finally stepping onto a road that might lead back to her child who might look through her as if she were no one. 2 vehicles pulled out of Asheville, the marked Cruiser in front, Clara's aging Civic tucked behind. Highways thinned to 2-lane ribbons, then to curling country roads hemmed by dense forest and rolling hills. For 2 hours she gripped the wheel and held formation, every mile stoking the storm inside her, hope that she would see her daughter's face again. Terror that Emmy Wells would greet her with a stranger's eyes. The GPS chimed as the afternoon sun burned, eye in a clean autumn sky. The cruiser slowed and turned onto a gravel drive marked by a weathered wooden sign. Kessler Farm. The property unfolded in orderly abundance, wide-porched farmhouse barns and outbuildings, kept with pride fields running long toward the horizon and orchards stippling the hillside. This was no hard-scrabble plot. Prosperity lived here. Clara parked behind the cruiser as a couple emerged from the house. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, his face carved by weather and years. The woman was smaller hair, streaked with gray and pinned. Back watching the police with wary composure, Bennett and Martinez approached, badges displayed. Clara hung back, heart hammering as she strained to catch every word. Mr. and Mrs. Kessler? Bennett asked. That's right, the man said. John Kessler. This is my wife, Miriam.
What brings you all the way out here? Bennett gestured
toward Clara. Mrs. Clara Maruin believes a young woman photographed on your property may be her daughter, missing for 18 years. John and Miriam exchanged a swift, unreadable glance. You must mean the magazine people, Miriam said carefully. They were here a few weeks ago for some fashion thing. We're looking for a young woman named Emmy Wells Martinez. Said the magazine lists her as working here that day. John shook his head slowly. Emmy doesn't work here permanent. Just helped out that day. We rotate hands with other farms, labor sharing. The words were barely out before Clara stepped forward, unable to hold herself back any longer. My daughter has a distinctive birthmark around her left eye, she said, her voice steady as she drew a childhood photo from her purse. Like the young woman in that spread. Ella was taken from daycare just before she turned 2. Miriam's expression softened with what looked like genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Maroon. I can't imagine." She peered at the photo. "The mark is similar, I'll grant you. But Emmy only worked here that day. We haven't seen her since." "Do you know where we can find her?" Bennett asked. John scratched his beard. "She came from Rowan's farm, I believe. He sends us day workers when we're short, Rowan," Claire repeated. "Do you have his full name and address?" John shook his head. "Just Rowan. Family arrangement been that way since my father's day." He tugged a small notebook from his pocket, scribbled a number, and tore off the page. "Don't know where his place is. Never been. Somewhere up in the mountains, I hear. Pretty isolated." Martinez took the slip. "Thank you, Mr. Kessler. Would you mind if we look around just to be thorough?" A pause. Another quick glance between the couple. "I suppose that's all right," John said at last, the reluctance not quite hidden. "Not sure what you expect to find, but have at it." Mrs. Maroon, Bennett said gently, "Would you like to wait here while we check the premises?" She nodded, jaw tight. As the officers headed for the barn, Clara studied the Kessler. Their words were careful, their posture attentive in a way that didn't match their practiced hospitality. Something was off to measured to neat. Miriam noticed her watching and offered a tight smile. "Water or tea, Mrs. Maroon? It's a long drive from Asheville." "No, thank you." A beat. "When Emmy was here, did she mention her family? Her childhood?" "Not really," Miriam said. "Quiet girl, kept to herself. Good worker, very diligent. Farm kids usually are," John added. "Raised with a strong work ethic?" 20 minutes later, Bennett and Martinez returned, faces composed. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. and Mrs. Kessler," Martinez said. "Everything appears in order." Back at the vehicles, Bennett called the station, relayed Rowan's number, and asked dispatch to run it. Clara listened to the clipped exchange, then waited through the dead air of a search that stretched too long. Finally, Bennett lowered the phone, frowning. "Nothing. The number isn't in any of our systems, and there's no cellular service registered to it in the surrounding counties. If he's as remote as they say, he may be outside regular coverage." "What does that mean?" Clara asked. "Hope dipping. How do we find him?" "We tried the number directly," Martinez said. "Already dialing." He waited, then shook his head. "No connection. Either the number's wrong, or he's beyond service." Clara checked her watch. Nearly 4 p.m., the day was burning down, and the trail, so close she could almost touch it, was already trying to slip away. The autumn sun was sinking fast, shadows stretching long and thin across the land. In less than 2 hours, darkness would swallow the hills. What now? Clara asked, her voice tight, fighting to keep the desperation from breaking through. Bennett exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words with care. "Without a location, we can't just start wandering into the mountains. Too many roads. Too many dead ends. The best move is to head back to Asheville, regroup, and come at this fresh in the morning. Detective Holden will be in tomorrow. He might have contacts we don't." Clara wanted to push back, to demand they keep going. A stubborn, unwelcome truth gnawed at her. They were right. Blindly chasing shadows through the mountains. Tonight could waste hours and still get her nowhere. "Fine," she said at last, though the word tasted bitter. "But I'm not going all the way back to Asheville. I'll find a place nearby. A motel. That way we start early." The officers nodded. Rizel Martinez agreed. "We'll head back to the station, get things ready for Holden." They parted in the gravel drive. Clara sat in her Honda a moment longer, eyes locked on the Kessler farmhouse in her rearview mirror. The couple's polite smiles replayed in. Her mind measured precise, as if each word they'd spoken had been weighed before leaving their lips. It wasn't the behavior of people with nothing to hide. She turned the key, the engine rumbling to life. 18 years of empty searching had brought her this close. One more night wouldn't break her, not now. The road wound through fields and forests, the sky bleeding into deeper shades of gold and indigo. 20 minutes later, a flickering neon sign cut through the dusk. Pine Ridge Motel vacancy. The place was squat and unassuming, a dozen single-story rooms in a row. Clara pulled in, stretching her stiff legs as she stepped into the office. Inside, a woman with bottle-red hair and reading glasses perched on her nose glanced up from a dog-eared paperback. "Help you?" she asked, setting the book aside. "Need a room for the night?" Clara replied. "One person? It's $29. Cable TV, hot water?" The woman slid a registration card across the counter. "Name's Doy. I run the place." Clara filled out the form, counting out the bills. As Doy made change, Clara's gaze drifted to a corkboard of local flyers. One image snagged her attention, a rustic building draped in strings of light glowing against the night. "What's that?" Clara asked, pointing. Asterisk. Doy followed her finger. "Miller's Tavern. Right across the road. Best food in 20 miles. Live music sometimes. Tonight's comedy night. Draws a crowd. Busy with locals?" Clara asked casually. "Always. Farmers, tradesmen, folks from every back road around here. Only real gathering place for miles." Clara hesitated, then pulled the folded magazine from her bag. She laid it on the counter, the glossy cover showing Emmy Wells in mid-laughter, the birthmark around her left eye unmistakable. "Ever seen her? Like go by Emmy Wells?" Doy leaned in, squinting. "Pretty girl. That birthmark something. Can't say I've seen her, though." "What about a man named Rowan? Owns a farm up in the mountains." Doy frowned in thought. "Maybe, but there's a lot of farmers. Around here I couldn't be sure." She slid the magazine back. "But the tavern? That's your best shot. If anyone knows, they'll be in there." Clara accepted the brass room, key end of the row beside the ice machine, and retreated to her room. A quick shower rinsed away the dust of the day, but not the tight coil of anticipation in her chest. By the time she crossed the road, the tavern's lights were warm beacons against the deepening dark. Inside Miller's Tavern was exactly what she expected: a wood-paneled time capsule, smelling of fried food, beer, and smoke that had seeped into every board over decades. Farm tools hung beside mounted deer heads, mismatched chairs crowded the tables, and a long bar ran the length of the far wall. The place was humming with life. A flannel-clad comedian worked the small stage, sending ripples of laughter through the packed room. At the back, knots of locals bent their heads together in conversation, while lone drinkers nursed beers at the bar. Clara slid onto an empty stool. "What can I get you?" She turned. The bartender was young, maybe early 20s, with dark hair tied into a short ponytail and an easy smile that looked like it belonged there. "Club soda," she said. He poured it over ice, set it in front of her, then tilted his head. "First time here? Is it that obvious?" He chuckled. "Small town. I know most faces that come through the door." Extended a hand. "Bran. My dad owns the place, but I'm the one who runs it most nights." The name hit Clara like a jolt of electricity. Pledger, Morris's surname. The woman who had stolen Ella from the daycare 18 years ago? It couldn't be, surely not. Pledger wasn't an uncommon name, and this young man would have been a child himself back then. Still, her pulse quickened. "Clara," she managed, shaking his hand. "Clara Marin Bran," repeated, leaning lightly against the bar. "What brings you to our little corner of nowhere? Not exactly tourist season?" Clara took a slow sip of her club soda, weighing her words. "Looking for someone?" One eyebrow lifted. "Anyone I might know?" She hesitated, then decided there was no point in playing coy. "My daughter. She was taken from her daycare when she was almost 2. That was 18 years ago." Even now, the words burned her throat. "I never found her." Bran's smile vanished, replaced by a shadow of genuine concern. "I'm sorry. That's awful." "I think I might have a lead," Clara said automatically, reaching for the magazine before realizing it wasn't in her bag. "Damn. Left it in my car." But a young woman in a fashion magazine had my daughter's birthmark identical. Photo was taken at the Kessler farm nearby. Brand straightened slightly at the name. "The Kessler? They don't come in here much. Keep to themselves." She was listed as Emmy Wells. "The Kessler told me she was just a day worker." She spoke. Clara caught a tiny flicker in Brand's expression. The eyes tightening, the jaw tightening, just enough to notice. "My mother worked at a daycare," he said, suddenly his tone dropping before she passed away. Clara's breath stalled. Where? Asheville Bran replied. I was young when she died. My dad raised me after that, built this place from nothing. A chill crept down Clara's spine. What were the odds? She forced her voice steady. Your mother. What was her name? Maurice, he said. Maurice. Pledger. The world seemed to tilt. Maurice Pledger, the woman whose face had haunted her dreams for nearly 2 decades. The woman the police had said abducted Ella. The woman whose body was found hanging in Pisgah National Forest 2 weeks later. Clara's mind screamed, but outwardly she kept her expression neutral. The police had claimed suicide. She'd never believed it. Everything okay? Bran asked, noticing her sudden stillness. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, she lied, then added, actually, no, I'm not. Her eyes drifted to a shelf behind the bar. Wedged between bottles was a framed photo, Morris unmistakable, even through the haze of years. Bran, I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Your mother, I know who she was. He frowned. What do you mean? I've seen her face hundreds of times. Clara pulled up an old news article on her phone, turning the screen toward him. Your mother was the daycare worker who took my daughter. Bran's color drained as he looked from the phone to Clara and back. No, that's impossible. My mom, she was good, Dad always said. The security cameras at Little Acorns captured her leading my daughter to a waiting car. Clara cut in voice like steel. 2 weeks later, they found her body. Police said guilt drove her to it. Bran pressed both hands to the bar as though steadying himself. Are you sure? I'm certain, she said. I'm sorry. He ran a hand over his face, then called out, Jake, cover for me. Without another word, he motioned her toward a shadowed corner table away from the crowd's laughter. Once they sat, his voice dropped to barely a whisper. Dad told me she died because of debt collectors. He said she paid a man he owed money to, but the man killed her. Anyway, hung her from a tree to make it look like suicide. Clara's stomach turned. The official report never sat right, and now the pieces twisted into something even darker. Did your father ever say anything about a child? About what happened to her? Bran shook his head quickly. No, I was 5 when she died. Dad never talked about it. Too painful, he said. His eyes widened as the thought took shape. You think my mom took your daughter to pay off my dad's debts and then sold her? That's what the police believed, Clara admitted. But Ella was never found. The trail went cold after your mother died. Bran's shoulders sagged, his voice low with regret. I'm sorry for what my family did to yours. I had no idea. Then his gaze sharpened. But you think your daughter might be this Emmy? Clara nodded. The birthmark is identical violet, lotus-shaped around the left eye, and she's the right age. And the Kessler mentioned Rowan, Bran murmured. He suddenly went. Still, Rowan is my father's name. Clara stared. Your father is Rowan Pledger, as Bran said slowly. I'd know his number anywhere. But the one the Kessler gave the police? That's his old number. He showed her his phone. The contact for Dad didn't match. The Kessler lied, Clara whispered. He doesn't live here, Bran. Said he's got a small farm about 20 minutes out, crops a few animals, nothing like the Kessler spread. He hesitated. I don't see him much anymore. Not since. Since what? Clara prompted. He sighed. Since I found out about his gambling. The tavern does fine now, but he's still got problems. I've been keeping my distance. But his eyes locked onto hers. I think it's time I paid him a visit. I think you should come with me. Clara's heart pounded. After what I just told you about your mother? Especially? Because of that, Bran said firmly. If my family had anything to do with taking your daughter, I need to help set it right. It's not too late. We could go now. Now, asterisk. He nodded. Jake can handle things here. Unless you'd rather wait for morning? Or the police? She considered it, the years of waiting heavy in her chest. Then she shook her head. No, I've waited 18 years. I'm not waiting another minute. Then I'll tell Jake I'm leaving, Bran said, rising. I'll follow in my car, Clara told him. I have things there, photos, Ella's belongings. They might help. With a terse nod, Bran headed inside to alert his coworker. leaving Clara at the bar with her drink. She barely tasted it, her mind was a storm of possibilities. Could she finally be on the brink of finding Ella after 18 endless years? And if so, what role had Rowan Pledger played in stealing her? By the time they left, night had swallowed the countryside. Clara trailed Bran's pickup through a snarl of winding back roads, her headlights catching the brief glint of animal eyes at the roadside. The moon poured an eerie silver light over the fields, turning the landscape ghostly and strange. During a rare, straight stretch, she thumbed her phone and fired off a quick text to Detective Holden. "I think I'm close. Here's my location." In case? Reception was patchy out here, but she prayed the message would push through. Her hands locked tighter around the wheel as Bran's earlier words replayed. If Rowan Pledger was the same Rowan the Kessler had mentioned, Dan Morris's husband, then the lines connecting everyone were darkening into something far more sinister. Yet one detail gnawed her. John Kessler swore Rowan lived in the mountains, but Bran's directions carried them through flat farmland. Someone was lying. After 20 minutes, Bran's taillights dipped as his truck turned onto a narrow dirt lane marked only by a leaning, rusted mailbox. Clara followed cautiously, her sedan jolting over the ruts. Before they reached the farmhouse, an older sedan eased out of the driveway ahead, its headlights slicing through the dark. Bran slowed just long enough to fall in behind it. Clara's pulse spiked. This had to be Rowan. The two vehicles wound deeper into the woods, the road shrinking to little more than a trail. Clara hung back, wary of wrecking her car on the rough ground, but Bran drove like a man unwilling to lose his quarry. After 10 tense minutes, the sedan ahead swung into a clearing. The farmhouse was small, modest compared to the Kessler spread, but neat. A vegetable garden glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Goats shifted in a fenced pasture. It's Rowan's. Sedan sat haphazardly near the porch driver's door ajar. Bran parked beside it. Clara pulled up a short distance away and stepped out, the night air cool and sharp dead. Bran called, moving toward the figure by the car. "What are you doing here this late?" "I went by your place, saw you leaving." Rowan Pledger turned. Tall, broad-shouldered, his hair the same shade as Bran's, but streaked with gray. His lined face flickered with confusion, till his eyes slid to Clara. "Bran," he rumbled, "what is this? Who's she?" "This is Clara Maru," Bran said, his voice taut. "She came to the tavern looking for her daughter. The daughter Mom kidnapped 18 years ago." Rowan's expression faltered just for a breath before he barked. "Your mother never kidnapped anyone." "She did, Dad," Bran pressed. "Clara's got proof security footage from the daycare. Mom walked out with her little girl, Ella," and Rowan's gaze snapped to Clara, hard and assessing. "You're making a mistake. I'm not here to pick a fight," Clara said evenly, though her heart hammered. "I just want my daughter. The Kessler told me a man named Rowan handles day workers for them. They gave me your number. I tried calling, but Bran says it's an old one." Something in Rowan shifted, his shoulders stiffened, his jaw set. "The Kessler," he muttered. The words nearly swallowed, then louder. "Those rich idiots. I don't know what they told you, but..." The farmhouse door creaked open. A young woman's voice drifted out. "Rowan, what's going on? Why didn't you come inside?" In the porch light's dim halo, Clara saw only a tall, slender silhouette, hair spilling over her shoulders. Her breath caught. Rowan moved sharply, blocking the view. "Nothing to worry about," he called. "Just visitors. Go back in."
Dad.
But the figure lingered, curious. "Watching, is that Emmy?"
But
Rowan's face darkened. "You need to leave, both of you. Now." Dad, Bran demanded, stepping closer. "Who is she? And why are the Kessler sending people to you for workers?" The standoff might have held, but the young woman on the porch decided otherwise. She came down the steps into the wash of headlights. Clara's knees nearly buckled. The birthmark. Violet lotus-shaped, curling around the left eye exactly as it had 18 years ago. "Oh my God!" The words slipped out before she could stop them. The girl Me looked at Clara with wary curiosity. "Who are you?" Clara forced herself forward a step. Every cell screamed to grab her, hold her, never let go. But she saw the caution in those eyes. "My name is Clara Maru," she said softly. I think you might be my daughter." Shock flickered across Emmy's face. then disbelief. What? That's impossible? My parents are John and Miriam Kessler. Are they? Rowan slid between them, tension radiating from him. She's got no proof. None. She's making wild accusations. Rowan's tone was sharp, but Bran was no longer listening to his father. He'd stepped closer to Emmy, his eyes fixed on her face as though seeing it for the first time. Birthmark, he murmured. It's exactly as Clara described. Emmy's fingers instinctively brushed the violet mark encircling her left eye. What about my birthmark? Clara's hands trembled as she reached into her purse, retrieving her phone. She scrolled quickly, then turned the glowing screen toward the young woman. This is my daughter Ella. She was taken from daycare. Almost 18 years ago. Emmy hesitated, then leaned forward. Her eyes widened as the images flicked past. A toddler with the same mark, the same tilt of the chin. This doesn't make sense, she whispered. I grew up on the farm. I've always lived with John and Miriam. Rowan made a derisive sound. Nonsense, Emmy. Go inside, now. But Emmy ignored him, transfixed by the photos as she swiped through. Clara's voice softened to a whisper. If what I'm saying is true, John and Miriam aren't your parents. They told me you were just a day worker Rowan sent to them. They pretended they barely knew you. At that, Emmy's head snapped up, her expression hardening. That's a lie. They raised me. Rowan muttered something under his breath. A curse followed by those Kessler idiots. Giving away my name. Bran's voice cut in. Sharper now, Dad. What's going on? What do you know? Rowan glanced between the three faces watching him and seemed to deflate. It's complicated. Uncomplicated, Bran shot back, his voice edged with something Clara hadn't heard before, anger. Rowan rubbed a hand through his graying hair. The Kessler asked me to keep Emmy here a few weeks. He said someone was looking for her, someone dangerous. They claimed they owed money. Couldn't pay. And these people might take her. Debt. Emmy's confusion deepened. What debt? The farm's fine. That's what they told me, Rowan insisted. Creditors. Dangerous ones. I was told to keep you safe until it blew over. Bran's voice darkened. You believed them? After what happened to Mom? What about your mom? Emmy asked, her voice thin with dread. Clara stepped closer, speaking carefully. Braun's mother, Maurice Pledger, worked at Little Acorn's Daycare in Asheville. She took my daughter. Took you. You were just under 2. Emmy's breath caught. But why? Bran answered before his father could. Dad had gambling debts. The police thought Mom kidnapped Ella as payment. Then those same people killed her and made it look like suicide. Emmy leaned against the porch railing, pale under the porch light. So if I'm really Ella, how did I end up with John and Miriam? They always wanted children, Rowan said reluctantly. Couldn't have their own. Adoption agencies wouldn't approve them because of John's criminal record. They found another way. Emmy's voice dropped to a disbelieving whisper. They bought me? Rowan's nod was heavy. From the same people who killed Maurice. They weren't just loan sharks, they dealt in other things. The night air seemed to tighten around them. Emmy crossed her arms as if holding herself together. So my entire life has been a lie. Her voice rose. Everyone is lying to me. Before another word could be spoken, the sharp wail of sirens cut through the night, fainted first, then rapidly closing in. Rowan stiffened. Someone called the police. If the Kessler, or those traffickers, think cops are involved, they'll send people after you. Asterisk, no more running, Emmy said suddenly, her voice steady. Now, she pulled her phone from her pocket, the screen glowing in the dark. I called them. I want the truth. All of it. I'm done hiding. The flash of red and blue spilled over the farmhouse as cruisers rolled in gravel, crunching under tires. Several officers stepped out, hands poised near their holsters. Going on here? One asked sharply, scanning the tense group. I called Emmy, said stepping forward. My name is Emmy Wells, or at least that's what I was told. This woman, she pointed to Clara, says I'm her daughter kidnapped 18 years ago. Recognition sparked in the officer's eyes. You're the missing Asheville girl, the one with the birthmark. Emmy's hand lifted unconsciously. To her face, Clara reached toward her, but the moment was broken by another officer speaking into his radio. "We've located the subject from the alert." First officer's tone turned brisk. "We'll need all of you at the station, now." Clara quickly reported the Kessler role in Emmy's abduction. The officer's face darkened. He radioed for backup to detain them immediately. "We're securing this property as a crime scene," he added. Asterisk one by one, they were guided into separate patrol cars. As Clara was led away, she caught Emmy's gaze, a flicker of fear determination. And maybe, just maybe, hope. At the station, Clara was placed in a small interview room. 3 chairs, a table, and a camera trained on her. An officer offered water and explained that Detective Holden was already on his way from Asheville. "About an hour out," he said. "In the meantime, we need your statement." She told them everything: the magazine, the Kessler farm, the Tavern Rowan, the confrontation. The officer wrote furiously, only interrupting for clarity. She finished, the room fell silent, except for the steady tick of the wall clock. Time dragged until 45 minutes later, the door opened again. A different officer stepped in, his posture rigid. "Mrs. Maru," he said, sitting across from her. "I have an update."
Asterisk. "We've been questioning the Kessler and..."
Mr. Pledger separately, the officer began, his tone measured but heavy with implication. "Based on the evidence so far, we believe there's substantial proof that Emmy Wells is in fact your biological daughter, Lennon." Clara's breath hitched, hope surging so hard it almost hurt. But the officer pressed on before she could speak. "The Kessler have confessed to purchasing an infant from a third party 18 years ago. They claimed desperation that they were approached by intermediaries promising a child for the right price." Clara's voice was sharp, and they never thought to ask where she came from. "They say they were told the child's mother couldn't care for her," the officer replied. "They admit they suspected the truth. That's why they kept her isolated on their farm, cut off from friends from the outside world." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "They stole her life. They'll face multiple charges," the officer continued. "As for Rowan Pledger, he's cooperating, giving us names, locations. He was involved, but the full extent is still under review. Cooperation may lighten his sentence, but he will face prison." Clara's mind leapt to the other mystery. And Morris Pledger's death? It was called a suicide. "If Rowan's telling the truth, it wasn't," the officer said. "We're reopening the case. He claims the same organization murdered her after she hinted she might go too. The press, when your daughter's disappearance drew national attention." Clara nodded slowly, trying to absorb the tangle of revelations. "And LME? What happens now?" "She's an adult," the officer said, his voice softening. "Legally, it's her choice who she stays with, but she's asked to speak with you." Fragile thread of hope coiled tight in Clara's chest. "Can I see her?" "Is still giving her statement?" "After that?" "Yes." He rose, adjusting his uniform. "Detective Holden will take over from here. He's been briefed." At the door, Clara called after him. "Officer, thank you." A single nod. Then she was alone with the hum of fluorescent lights and the slow, relentless tick of the wall clock. She sat in the cramped station waiting area, cradling a paper cup of lukewarm coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Her gaze never left the hallway door. When it finally opened, her breath caught. Emmy stepped through shoulders, straight despite the shadows under her eyes. She hesitated, then crossed the space and sat beside her. For a moment, the silence between them was thick with 18 years of absence. At last, Emmy spoke. "Never thought I'd end up in a police station at midnight, learning my whole life was a lie. I never thought I'd find you," Clara whispered. "After so many years, I almost stopped believing." Emmy studied her face. "They're charging John and Miriam kidnapping, falsifying records, obstruction of justice." "I'm sorry," Clara said, meaning it. "I know they raised you." "They did," Emmy admitted. "But they also kept me caged, controlled every visit, every step off the farm. Said it was for my protection." A bitter smile.
Ow!
"I know why," Clara hesitated. "Then how did you end up in that magazine, if they kept you hidden?" "That was an accident," Emmy said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Photographer, Leah got lost, wandered onto our land. She thought my birthmark was beautiful, said it made me photogenic. I let her take the picture." "That mark," Clara murmured. It's how I knew. I'd have recognized it anywhere. Emmy touched her cheek. The Kessler said it made me look odd. Told me to hide it. It's beautiful, Clara said firmly. Your father called it your lotus marks. Said it meant you were special. Emmy's expression shifted. My father. Is he? He's alive, Clara told her. We divorced after you vanished. The loss was too much. He's in Colorado now, if you want. I know he'd meet you. Me nodded slowly. All my life I felt different, like pieces didn't fit. You have his determination, Clara said softly, and his kindness. Even as a toddler, you had both. Emmy's eyes locked on hers. I have so many questions. Well, answer them all, Clara promised. We have time now. The door swung open again. Detective Holden entered, looking weary, but resolved. Rowan Pledger's cooperation could help dismantle one of the Southeast's largest trafficking rings. What happens to him? Emmy asked. He'll be charged, Holden said. But he never directly committed an abduction that will count in his favor. The door opened once more. Brand stepped in, relief etched on his face. They're letting me go. I'm not implicated. He looked at Emmy. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not your fault, Emmy said, quietly. You were a kid too. Brand glanced at Clara. If I hadn't been at the tavern tonight, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe it wasn't chance, Clara said. Maybe some things are meant to find their way. Holden cleared his throat. Need statements tomorrow? Emmy, do you have somewhere to stay tonight? I don't want to go back to the farm. You could stay at my motel, Clara offered. We'll get another room. As they turned to leave, the Kieslers were led past in handcuffs. Emmy stiffened, her gaze locking on them. John and Miriam's faces were pale with shame. Brand stepped closer to her. Strange, isn't it? 18 years ago, what happened shaped both our lives and neither of us knew. Something softened in Emmy's expression, hesitant, but... Riel, Clara reached for her hand. We have time now, she said, to rebuild piece by piece. When Emmy opened her arms, Clara stepped into them. Not just holding the daughter she'd lost, but the young woman she'd become. No longer little Ella, but a mere resilient, unbroken. Against all odds, she had found her way back. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Life had given them a second act. Neither had dared to imagine one that could be written. With healing truth and the unbreakable bond that 18 stolen years could not destroy,